Hey guys, don't forget Hackamania is coming up May 9th through the 11th in Las Vegas, and I will be there live with Who Are These Podcasts. I can't wait, and I hope to see all of you guys there. Oh, plus, if you use my promo code Kaylee, Cayley, you can get 10% off your tickets. Can't beat that. See y'all there. What's up, Internet? Welcome to Once Over. I'm Kaylee, and with me today I have Christian Bladt, and we're going to be giving the Once Over to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
You remember your dreams? Only the wet ones.
Got special work to do here.
There will be spoilers.
Give it a good once-over.
Giving us the once-over.
Giving him the once-over.
Give me a once-over.
Down to give us the once-over.
For a routine once-over.
Once-over.
Oh, just once over lightly.
There will be spoilers for a movie that's very close to 40 years old. Yes. So be ready. Be ready for it.
It came out in 1985. And this movie was directed by Jack Shoulder and written by, now I'm forgetting his name. I should have written that down. His last name starts with a C. I'm starting this off great. Oh, Chasen. Is it Chasen?
David Chaskin.
So yes, you are correct. This movie came out in 1985. It was directed by Jack Shoulder and written by David Chaskin. And it was very, very different than the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I would refer to this movie as a possession film, a movie about one man taking over another man's body, which of course leads us into all of the gay subtext that you and I will be discussing. But before we get into the movie itself, I would love it if you would introduce yourself to everybody and let them know where they can find you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's an honor to be back on here with you, Kaylee. And my name's Christian Bladt. And some of you watching this right now are most likely to know me from Who Are These Broadcasters, which is a show that we do live Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. It is also available as an audio podcast. And despite the fact that it is a video-centric show, I'm told that it works fairly well as an audio podcast if that's how you enjoy your shows. I have been on Who Are These Podcasts a number of times, very rarely with you, but I think we have been on the screen together. And I have my own podcast that I've been doing for now. I think we're in our 12th year, maybe our 13th year. It's hard to keep track of the Bladcast, Bladcast. And we do a lot of movie talk over there. And Kaylee has been a part of a number of those. I think you were on 4 or 5 just last year, including Beetlejuice, and that movie Maestro with that Bradley Cooper spent years trying to learn how to play the piano and make sure that no one cared.
And yeah, I was going to say, and I will spend years trying to forget it. It's just perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Exactly.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And I think that actually the reason that you and I are talking about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 today is because we got to chit-chatting about it a little bit. Yeah. Were we talking about gay movies? How did we get on the topic of Nightmare on Elm Street?
I think we were just talking, it was when we were talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, which is one of the movies that we also covered over there on the Bladcast. It's become a Christmas tradition that we do a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. So just pencil in that we'll be talking about part 3, which I've actually never seen. So, but we were talking about that, and I was very dismissive of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Dead. And I know for a fact, sitting down to rewatch, I had only watched it one time, but I had a very strong reaction. When I saw it, I was probably about 12. I won some contest where I got VHSs for Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3. And I don't even know how I won it. I think I wasn't old enough, but they sent them to me anyway. And I think probably because of part 2, I sold them to my friend Dan, who did the Beetlejuice episode with us. Yeah. And I never watched this one again. I've seen number 1 a few times, and number 3, Dream Warriors, mostly for the awesome Dawkins song, is probably why I've seen it so many times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Plus, welcome to primetime, bitch.
Yeah,
come on.
right.
That's one of the greatest Freddy lines of all time. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
So yeah, I was excited to have an excuse to rewatch this because I may have gone the rest of my life without ever rewatching it without you saying like, no, we're definitely talking about it. So
We're
thank you.
doing it. We're doing it. So I just want to correct you on one little thing, and I probably made the same mistake too because it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical. You said this is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Dead. This is Freddy's Revenge.
Oh, Freddy's Revenge. Yeah, Freddy's Dead is part 6, and yeah.
But here's the thing. That is my number one question about this movie. Who in the heck is Freddy getting revenge upon? That makes no sense whatsoever because in this movie, we are in a completely new cast of characters. We are not revisiting Nancy. The way that we are transferring ourselves back from the first movie is that our character, Jesse, who of course is played by Mark Patton, he moves into Nancy's old house. And so our connection in this film is that we are in the same place on Elm Street. But Freddy doesn't care about Jesse's family.
No, he doesn't. But, you know, the little bit that I know about the Freddy Krueger character is that his pure motivation is revenge for the townspeople, the angry mob that sought him out and burned him alive, which... By the way, there's not a lot to say about the TV series Freddy's Nightmares, except for the pilot episode where they actually tell that story, and you see that happen. And, you know, I mean, it's late 80s broadcast television, so, you know, it's not as graphic as you might expect. But I remember that being, you know, like, oh, my God, this is it, and getting to see that. So I think his revenge is on more the parents who, you know, I don't know how many years have gone by. I guess they say it's 5 years since the first movie. It took him 5 years to sell the house. So it's been a long time that he's been living in the dream world. But I think that's his revenge, Kaylee.
So, but okay, here's the thing about that. If you were going to get revenge on the townspeople, wouldn't you want to get revenge on the townspeople who had been living there for a long time, not the townspeople that just moved in?
Look, I don't think you've ever been in quite the murderous rage that Fred Krueger has been in, and he has a lot of time. And, you know, look, I think he might be a little twisted by his rage, and it might be as simple as the idea of causing pain and suffering the way it was caused for him, and that seems to be his easiest outlet. I do agree that Freddy's Revenge, it does ask some question. It's more like, hey, Freddy's back.
Yes, I would agree. And again, this is very, very different. This is the only film in the entire series where Freddy kills each one of the victims outside of the dreams. It is the possession of someone in the real world versus being killed in one's dreams. But that being said, I think that this is one of Freddy's best looks. I think that the makeup for Freddy Krueger in this film is outstanding. I think his bone structure is a little bit different. He's got those amber demonic eyes, and it works really well for me.
Yeah, he's also slimier than you'll
Yes.
see in the later films. And honestly, it's probably like a couple extra hours of prosthetics. Robert Englund was probably like, look, I'm coming back, but I'm not getting the slime on. You know, I was reading that they tried to do this, tried to lowball this and not have him play Freddy. Yeah. And they had like a different body type actor, and it just didn't work right. He didn't move right. But I guess that actor is in the shower scene with the coach, which, boy, do we have to talk about that at some point.
Oh, boy.
The idea that they wouldn't have used him, you know, that they would have replaced him the way they replaced Jason's and Michael Myers. You know, I mean, we see his face, he talks, and his voice is different in this compared to any of the other ones, right? It's more distorted.
We got special work to do here, you and me.
I was like, it wasn't like that in the first one.
This is God.
And look, I remember the later ones the best because I saw them in the theater and watched them more often, especially Freddy's Dead because Alice Cooper plays his father.
Yep.
But, you know, so he is a very different character. I mean, I guess just he's still the same character, but the aesthetics are so different in this movie, you know?
Absolutely. So it was actually Robert Shea, the producer of this film and the owner of New Line Cinema at the time. It was his idea to say, no, we really do need Robert Englund.
Yeah.
And I think he was totally right. A lot rested on this film also for New Line Cinema. If this movie had not succeeded in the box office, which it did, they probably would have had to close down New Line Cinema. So we have lots to thank for this film.
Yeah, and I mean the budget, especially in this time frame, I mean is so low, and the only way you were going to make money off of it was people buying tickets to it, which were probably like $4 at the time. So a lot of people had to come and see this movie. Yeah. But there's some of the fun is there, but he's such a different character, and the idea of him operating in the real world was always what stuck with me about what I didn't like about it. And rewatching it, I was just like, I like him. There's so much more he can do in your dreams. He's so much more interesting. He becomes more like some of these other characters that I referenced by being outside in the real world, showing up at by the way, the least sexy pool party you can ever attend. But running around at that house, it's like he's not as scary as when reality can bend. The bus dream sequences are the best stuff in this movie for me.
What I'm hearing is that you prefer Breckin Meyer bouncing around like a video game character. And like a Looney Tunes guy than you do anything that happens in this movie. That's what I'm hearing right now.
You might be hearing that. When I think of these movies, I think of probably through like the 4 and maybe 5, but the it's tough because to me, like the peak really is Dream Warriors. It's like they get it figured out. And I think 4 and 5 I actually saw in the theater, and I have fond memories of them, but I don't think that they're the best entries in the series.
In the series, yeah. I certainly understand that, and I definitely think that this movie has its flaws. Perhaps if it hadn't been a Freddy Krueger movie, it might have been a little bit easier to understand. And overall, the tides have been, this movie sucks. It is only recently that this movie has become a little bit of a cult classic, and so much of that has to do with the gay undertones, or I would say overtones, that the film has, because this is arguably one of the gayest horror movies of all time. I would still say that 1981's Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker is more gay than this, but it's pretty darn gay.
I think that it has that reputation because it's so much better known than a lot of the other ones. I think the Wikipedia page for this movie references an article that Cracked magazine did, and this was the gayest horror movie. I think it's unintentionally gay.
All right, so let's just name some of the gay things that happen in this movie. So first of all, obviously, lots of crotch shots.
Yeah.
We get the tighty-whitey close-up with the adjustment, as I might say.
The tighty-whities that might be a size or two too small, by the way.
Oh, yes, I would definitely agree with that. I'm not complaining, but I would, we have Jesse shaves his chest, which for me in the 1980s was just not a thing. That whatever. I noticed that when the kids are all playing baseball, the dude who's up to bat does this little like butt wiggle that I don't think is related to swinging the bat, and I was like, whoa, hello.
Yeah, and the pitcher takes a ball to the head, which is something to absolutely keep in mind.
Yes, we'll get more balls to the head later in the movie as well.
So many balls to the head.
Beautiful. In addition to that, we get a lot of male butts. So Jesse gets pantsed, and we get to see his bare butt along with some wrestling. And then later we get to see the coach's bare butt getting whipped.
Yeah, they're just bloody, which is that's what we call a good whipping, Kaylee.
Yes. Oh boy, it was. Freddy has a lot of like one-liners too, where he like, "Daddy can't help you now."
Daddy can't help you now.
Oh, he can't. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think one of his most famous ones, of course, was "You've got the body.
You've got the body.
I've got the brain."
I've got the brain.
Freddy.
Hey, Freddie, are you coming on to me?
Yeah.
What if I am?
We got special work to do here, you and me.
Obviously, I didn't even say this in the beginning of the list, but having Jesse as the final guy as opposed to having a final girl. At one point, they are saying that the coach goes to pretty boy S&M clubs and is gay.
Schneider's always got to stick up his ass.
And then we end up in a pretty boy S&M club,
Yeah.
which is gay.
Yes.
That's a good one.
That's definitely a pretty boy S&M club. That's not your typical as I said, it's not your rough trade S&M.
The whole dance sequence is just gay. First of all, it's To Touch Me.
Yeah.
Second of all, we have the butt bumps as well as the ejaculating pop toy.
Don't forget the can of jock itch.
Oh yes, how could I?
Yeah. And we know why his jock is so itchy.
And probe. There at one point somebody says stick it up his ass. I was like, oh.
Always got to stick up his ass.
Yes, please.
So yeah, that's. I noticed also at one point when Jesse is sleeping in his room, all of his stuff is like melting because again it's supposed to be hot and he's kind of like in dreamland, and it looks like there's kind of a melting dildo next to his bed. I'm not actually sure what that's supposed to be, but looks like
I was distracted by the record. I didn't notice the dildo, which I believe
It
it
might
takes
not
a
have
lot.
been.
It takes a lot for a dildo to melt, I would have to assume. They're designed to, have their temperature increased. So that's how hot it was in there, Kaylee. I didn't take a note on the specifics in Grady's room. I just had a general comment. I wish that I had, though, because there were specific things that I was just like, look, how gay is this kid's room?
he also just completely stops hooking up with Kim because he is repulsed by her femininity and then runs off to Grady's room.
Well, that tracks a little bit, Kaylee.
Yeah, if you're very gay.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. For Jesse, it makes sense.
It tracks.
Yeah. That's not what I would do, but it's
Yeah.
certainly what Jesse would do.
He has Freddy bursting out of his body. He can't contain his gayness anymore. And then we get the lovely, lovely hot dogs and beer ejaculations at the pool party. Things are just whipping all over the place.
Yeah, Lisa kissing Freddy is like the one hetero moment in the whole movie. It's the only one.
And I mean, obviously, we can't forget this line.
I need you, Jesse.
And, Kaylee, when I'm talking about seeing this, I was 12. And so when I'm 12, it's like 1988. And the reason that I mentioned that, I think it's important, is we didn't really, we kind of knew what gay was. I'd seen like reruns of Hollywood Squares with Paul Lynde.
What's the best reason for pounding meat?
Oh, loneliness.
So I knew what gay was, I knew who Rip Taylor was, I knew gay when I saw it, Liberace, but I don't think it really sat in that's what this was. But watching it now, you're just like, oh my God, it's like an allegory, to nerd out to comic books for a moment. It's a way that people identify with the X-Men movies because you're an other, you're an outsider. And a lot of times those films, especially the Bryan Singer films, are seen as this is an allegory for being gay, Mm-hmm. So the possession really is like you're saying, like, oh, the scary man has taken over my body. And I mean, who did the research to go to that I can't even call it an S&M club, that bar that they go to that has like a slight amount of leather?
I have the answer to that.
I want the answer to that.
So there is an excellent documentary about Mark Patton, and we will get more into him and why this movie is so gay in a little bit. But there is an excellent documentary about him called Scream, Queen, and it is all about the gayness of this film and his experience with that because he was, in fact, a gay man. And he blames a lot of what happened to his career on the fact that this movie typecast him as gay. And in 1985, it was not acceptable to be gay in Hollywood. You were not supposed to be gay. It was very, very bad, and you would not get roles because of that. And so
there's a point in the late 70s where Elton John married a woman. All right,
Yes.
that's how bad it was.
Yes,
that you couldn't be gay.
Exactly. And so he was terrified after this movie came out, and probably rightfully terrified that he would never get another role. And there's some debate about if he stepped down from acting or if he really was no longer offered any more roles. I think part of it is probably his fault and part of it is probably society's fault. But regardless, during the making of the documentary Scream Queen, the director Jack Shoulder actually talks about getting that S&M club.
This was written not as a gay bar, it was written as a transvestite bar.
That's right.
In the script, and they actually threw kind of odd-looking women in.
So they have an S&M club, and it turns out that the bar that they filmed in was actually one of the most known gay bars.
You filmed in one of the biggest gay bars in Los Angeles.
Oh, well, was that a gay bar?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. It's one of the
toilet bar.
Yes.
Jack, please don't play dumb.
It's the.
No, these guys didn't know.
They didn't know. The person who knew
on my audition.
All of the cast and crew are sitting around with director Jack Shoulder, and he's saying, I honestly had no idea. I was just scouting for locations, not even thinking about, where I was going. I just needed the place where I could put the camera easily, and it needed to function for me.
I went and I scouted I went and I scouted the bar because I wasn't thinking about these things.
No,
it never occurred to me.
He didn't think like this.
And now that you mention
I'm
it,
defending.
I do remember.
Not always.
But I went and I scouted the bar when it was closed. So
That's
I
right.
didn't see like
You
a
just
whole
saw a
bunch of
bar.
gay guys.
And all of the cast and crew was like, yeah, we totally believe him that he had no idea that was a gay bar.
Yeah, I know. The fact that everybody recognized him when he walked in, like Norm on Cheers, he's like, no, shh, quiet, everybody, quiet. Yeah. Ixnay on the A gay.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about Mark Patton. Mark Patton plays Jesse, and he is what I would argue to be one of the first ever final guys in a horror movie. He is not the stereotypical final girl. Usually we are following around a girl, and I think that a lot of the reason for that relates to the fact that in horror movies, we like to see a woman, a victim, overcome something and then take possession of a weapon that looks like a phallus and use that in order to succeed. And that is a wonderful thing in horror movies. That's one of my favorite things, is when the woman grabs the knife and wields it like a badass. Yeah. And it is hard for people to understand that a man might be defallicized. He might need to earn his phallus back. And I think that is a lot of the struggle that people have with Jesse as being the main character in this film. Yeah,
I made a point of not reading any of the, why do people hate this movie? Yes. I wanted to just rewatch it. And pretty quickly, he's drenched in sweat in his tighty-whities, and let's just say they are tighter than I'm comfortable with. You might feel differently, but I was like, oh, those are really tight. I really wished that he slept in boxers.
Yes, they were very tight, and he adjusts himself.
Yeah, that's right, he does.
And then the other thing that I noticed in that sequence, and this might have been because he was a little bit older than a high school student, but I noticed he had shaved his chest, which I believe in the 80s was largely just for a gay man.
Right. To the extent to which he shaved it, it was, you were probably always getting shoulders and back, even in the 80s. But yes, I did think like, oh, this is like he's on a CW drama in 2007. It's like, it's very well manicured. I was not disturbed. I was distracted by his nipples. I really was. And I really wish there was that little tuft of hair covering them. That would have really helped me not be just sort of entranced by them, really, maybe hypnotized. But by the time that they're at the scene where the coach, who we of course have to talk about, has him and the other kid doing the push-ups, and their push-ups, they are just humping the ground. There's a lot of different kinds of push-ups. There's a kind of push-ups that we used to call girl push-ups. There's the military push-ups where you clap, and this is just like dry hump push-ups that he's doing. I was like, oh, wow, this is really gay. And not in the way that, when maybe we were kids in a different era. Some of us might have said that's gay to me. No, this is terrible. No, this is gay in the way that this is actually gay. There's a lot of homosexual subtext, and like you said, not so sub. It's really homosexual text.
Really homosexual dom text, I think, is at least where we need to go when it comes at least to the coach. So you are completely correct. And when they are in that push-up scene, it's just completely crazy. Jesse gets pantsed and you can see his bare butt. And there's some very playful wrestling.
I did. By the way, I did make a joke. Not a joke. I made a note like, oh, okay, I see why Kaylee likes this movie so much.
Yeah,
because we'd already had the bulge at that point, and then we get some man ass. I'm like, all right, no wonder you like this movie.
And it is interesting. We get no female nudity. There is only male nudity in this movie, which is wild, like absolutely wild for an 80s slasher film.
For any kind of 80s slasher film. I mean, not and that's why I referenced the least sexy pool party. Like, there's a lot of girls there in two pieces, and I'm like, not all of them. Like Lisa's friend is very slutty and very 80s, and like basically a hero to the men at that party, the boys at that party. Yes. But and I think a lot of it has to do with Lisa, who I read that they cast her because she looked like Meryl Streep. But my notes were she's a more plain Joan Cusack.
Oh.
By the way, I love Joan Cusack. She's just a character actress, so.
Yeah, it's Kim Myers who plays Lisa, and I cannot see... She looks exactly like Meryl Streep to me. I mean, every single time that I have seen this movie, I've been like, oh, it's Meryl Streep. Oh, look at that. She also looks a little bit like... What's... Natasha, I can't think of the actress's last name, that was in Californication.
Oh, not Natasha Lyonne, who I don't think she looks like. I also think that she looks a little bit like Gillian Anderson. So I would actually put Meryl Streep third. So wow. I go Joan Cusack, Gillian Anderson, and then you have to stress young Meryl Streep, because Meryl Streep's been around for so long. You have to go back to like this era of Meryl Streep, which is not usually what people think about. But yes, and she's fine, but that's not necessarily what you're looking for in these movies. Like, you believe that she's interested in Jesse, and usually in the horror movie, the girl that is interested in the guy is so much hotter than you could ever imagine him getting. You kind of look and you go, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense.
Well, I think part of that is because Jesse is an attractive guy, and he is definitely, as a character, more in touch with his feminine side. He seems to be a little bit more sensitive of a character, and especially when he's covered in sweaty goodness. But he has that kind of sweet side, and that makes him very believable. I find the character of Lisa to be a little bit flat. Her motivation, I don't really understand it. She is certainly not a final girl in the same way that Nancy was, and that is why we rest so heavily on Jesse. Jesse is the strong character in this film, and the character that needs to overcome the adversity of either Freddy or confronting his own sexuality.
Well, and I do have to make the obvious joke that Lisa's personality isn't the only thing about her that I found flat and was very disappointed by. Look, it was the 80s. It was not easy to see boobs, and I mean, just nothing. And I think that I don't know. I think you don't necessarily just cast an actress because they look like a really talented actress.
Yeah, in fact, I would say that's a good reason not to cast them, because you don't want to be...
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
whatever.
And by the way, one of the things that I thought in the first scene in the bus, the note that I had, why in the 80s, why did teenage boys always look like they were in their 40s, but teenage girls look like they're 12? Yeah. It's always this like disparity, and in reality, they're always about the same age. Like, I think the actress who played Lisa was like 19 when they made this or whatever. So and they're all like in their early 20s usually. But you know, you have to remember that the 80s is a decade. I guess it was technically the 90s that decided that, yeah, Ian Ziering looks like he's in high school. Let's go ahead and put him on TV, despite his receding hairline. Yeah,
it's true. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this great opening sequence. I think that this is one of the best sequences in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. It starts out with Robert Englund without the makeup on, driving a school bus, and they go on an unsanctioned field trip into the desert. They crash, and the only passengers that are on the bus are two popular looking girls and Jesse. And the earth starts collapsing in. Then the bus ends up resting on like two stalagmites, which is so cool. Like, it's a very, very cool and evil, hellish visual.
After the movie ended, I started thinking about, like, what percentage of the budget was that opening, you know, because it looked great. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, they tried to do something and you can see that they didn't quite. No, they had the money. It looked great. And it is, I would say, the best sequence in the movie. And I'm sure that Robert Englund was very excited to show up on set, and they're like, yeah, no makeup today, so you can sleep in an extra 4 hours.
Yes, it's true. It's so true. Although they probably put him in makeup right after that.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great point. Or this was at the end of a day. They're like, all right, rip off the makeup and then get in the bus. Get in the bus, Freddy.
I like that the movie both starts and ends with this school bus. It feels reminiscent of the original movie to me because we had the kids jumping in the car. I like those little nods to it. Of course, Wes Craven, who made the original Nightmare on Elm Street, he has denounced this film. He did not want to be involved in it. He didn't even like the idea of there being sequels to the original. He wanted it to just end and be done with. Much to his dismay, here we are, I think 8 movies later altogether, including things like Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, much to his dismay, all of the sequels that he's listed as a producer on, and that means that he was paid handsomely. And I know he comes back to it, and I do think that this movie probably made him realize, you know, sort of like George Lucas looking at the Star Wars Christmas special, that you realize, like, oh wait, when I'm not involved, look what can happen, you know. So it's almost like you can be very protective. And there's a lot of people that, you know, filmmakers are like, well, why would I make a sequel? And I'm like, I mean, one, there's more story to tell, but clearly there's a lot more money than in, you know, some of the other things that you might want to try and do. But I think that it starts off great, which, you know, obviously seeing this movie in a theater, imagine coming in the middle of that, then you're like, oh my God, I gotta buy another ticket to this. What did I miss? You know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So we've already talked a little bit about Jesse and about his love interest, Lisa. He also has a friend named Grady, who I don't find to be particularly compelling.
I'm grounded.
How come?
I think my grandmother down a flight of stairs.
But you have mentioned, and we cannot move on without talking about the coach, played by Marshall Bell.
We cannot move on without talking about the coach.
We cannot move on. Okay, first of all, I love Marshall Bell. He's awesome in Total Recall. He's awesome in Stand By Me. And I think he's awesome in this. He is a character actor, and he is quite the character in this one.
He is quite the character in this one. There's like all of his behavior at school, it is kind of stereotypical for the idea of the gay gym teacher. Usually it was a lesbian gym teacher, I think you would see that a lot more in movies. But it's really the obvious turning point is when he runs into him at the club. And then he has to go and run laps. And you're like, wait, why? Because he was at the club? I was like, did they cut something for time? By the way, this movie's an hour and 25 minutes. You could let it breathe a little bit, New Line.
Yes, I would completely agree that transition makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
So my actual confusion of that sequence was, wait, is Jesse on a sleepwalk right now? Because he ends up in this S&M nightclub that is not, I mean, it's not like it says gay bar all over it, but all the people who are in there, there's lots of interesting looking women. There's The coach from his school is wearing a leather daddy shirt.
Yeah.
It's very clearly, it's racy for the 1980s. We'll put it that way.
Yes.
And I thought that perhaps Jesse was sleepwalking and that this was part of a sequence where we are going to understand, because when he shows up at the club, he's a sweaty mess in his pajamas, and now he's in this punk or gay bar or wherever he is. And he does, when he sees the teacher, we then just transition straight from in the gay bar into a basketball gym. Yeah. And Jesse running laps while the coach is like, do more laps. I guess for being bad.
For being at a bar underage. I mean, the drinking age was 21 by now. Sometimes when you watch things from the 70s, you have to forget that high school seniors could legally drink. This is not one of those cases. Yeah. Although, I mean, what Jesse looks like. And by the way, Grady looks like he's 35. I wanted to say that when you brought him up. It's just like, it's like, okay, try a little harder. But anyway, so yeah, and it's like, I assume that must be what the implication is you're not old enough to be out at a bar, you're in trouble, and the only way that I know how to exact trouble is by making you run laps, dirtball. But and this is really, where it's starting to blur the line as when he's manifesting Freddy, are we seeing actual Freddy, or is it, is Freddy basically the stand-in for the audience and it's just Jesse doing all of these things? It's very unclear at this point in the movie, even if you've only seen the first one where you're like, I thought he killed people in their dreams,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I almost feel like you need to remove this movie from the universe in order to be able to enjoy it.
I think many have. Yes, many have. Yes.
So this entire sequence, let's talk a little bit more about this coach sequence. So the coach tells him to go hit the showers after he's done running laps, and the coach goes to get a jump rope, which also felt shockingly erotic to me. And then weird things start happening. So like there's like tennis racket lines, cords start snapping, balls are flying everywhere. It was my cat's favorite scene of the movie. My cat was like, oh my God, this is my favorite thing that has ever happened in the universe. Yeah. And then the jump rope comes and snags the teacher, the coach, and he gets hung up, stripped, and whipped with a magical towel.
Right, and let's not brush past the fact that you were talking about he's pelted by balls for being gay, basically. Yes. There are balls everywhere.
Thank you.
Balls of different sizes. And I hear tell they're all different sizes, but I wouldn't really know. That's not where I'm necessarily my area of expertise. But so I wrote that Coach pelted repeatedly with balls, ... Symbolism with a question mark, and it was a joke when I wrote it because it was like, by this point it was so obvious. And by the way, he doesn't just get whipped by that magic towel. I mean, it's like a cat of nine tails. What Freddy can do with that towel, something to keep in mind, if you swipe right and Freddy Krueger shows up on the dating apps.
Very erotic. Very erotic.
Very much so.
I'm so glad that you paused me to remind me about the hilariousness of him getting pelted with balls. Yes. The note that I wrote, which of course I forgot to look at, is balls flying everywhere. Just right in the face with the balls.
Miss Stoger, my plastic surgeon doesn't want me doing any activity where balls fly at my nose.
Well, there goes your social life.
Right in the face with the balls.
It's so stupid, and oh boy, do I love it. That is just like goofiness, absolute goofiness. There again, Mark Patton, the star Jesse, he puts a lot of blame on the writer Chaskin. He puts a lot of blame on the writer for making this so overtly sexual, and the writer has kind of gone back and forth saying, yeah, I knew what I was doing and I didn't know that I was doing that and it was unintentional, and you're just so gay that you brought it to life.
Well, I find it really interesting that over the course of 30 years, you've denied this.
That I've denied?
That you had written this as a gay movie. You would say, well, it was subtext.
Oh, I gave an interview 5 years ago where I admitted it it was to a website, but...
There's a quote that you have, and I'm just going to sort of give it to you off the cuff. you didn't write the movie as a homoerotic movie, you wrote it as a homophobic movie. The type of movie that they should show at a conversion camp. That the love of a good woman can make any gay man straight.
Well, that was a joke.
But I think it's hard to debate that if you are writing a scene where balls are hitting some guy in the face repeatedly, that there was some sort of gay subtext.
Yeah. No, there's nothing about Jesse in Mark Patton. I keep struggling really hard to not call him Mike Patton, the singer from Faith No More.
Yes.
Mark Patton. There's nothing about him where you don't look at him and go like, oh yeah, if this were a traditional horror movie with where he's maybe even the boyfriend of the final girl, like there's nothing about him that screams like, oh, okay. It's not like looking at Freddie Mercury or Rob Halford, head to toe in leather and being like, I don't know if I buy them with a girlfriend, So it doesn't. It's the script, and yes, he brings a quality to it, but no, what's on the page, that's what he's got to work with, and perhaps it becomes a little bit more gender bending with his portrayal. But it's what did you write is really what it comes down to.
So he actually choreographed his own dance number. So as long as we are talking about the portrayal that he brings to this character, we should jump back to his dance number. So he is unpacking his room, and he puts on Touch Me by Wish featuring Fonda Rae. And he does a little dance while he's unpacking. He bumps a drawer closed with his butt 3 times.
Sure does.
He uses a little kids game, one of those little pop games, and he uses that and wields it like a penis, and then he busts a nut with it. Yeah. It's very like, whoa.
I mean, and by the way, that's when, if you're Jesse, that's when you know that Lisa's a good egg. She's like, "Hey, I'll help you."
Yeah.
Hey, that's when you realize. And I had to look up that song because I recognized it. It's made much more popular in the early '90s by Kathy Dennis. That's the version, because I'm like, wait, I know this song, and it was like a top 40 hit, but not this version of it. So it was like. Sometimes you'll be shocked, like songs that are in movies, but this was just a different version of it. But I think that it worked really well with his little dance number. And there's some stuff in here that it just screams 80s. Notably, I had to jot down that he's got a can of New Coke before they went back to Coca-Cola Classic. It's like, okay, he wears these high top sneakers all the time. Like he comes downstairs in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, okay, we get it. It's the 80s. I had high tops like that. I'm not embarrassed to say, but I didn't put them on when I came downstairs after I had drenched my sheets wet.
So I noticed something else that I thought was not particularly 80s, but it was kind of gay. When Kim is helping him clean out his room and unpack his room, the game Probe is predominantly featured for a while. Yes. And I was like, wow, that camera's really lingering on Probe there.
By the way, I'm glad you reminded me of that shelf, because I didn't put this down in the notes, but shame on the Remax agent who, when they were trying to sell this house for 5 years, didn't think to make sure, hey, let's get the diary out of that room of the girl who saw her boyfriend murdered across the street. Or at the very least, let's flip through it and see if there's anything troubling in there. That's some very bad 80s horror movie writing. It's like, well, let's see what happened here. Oh my gosh, look at the end of the... It's like, all right, enough already.
Well, and also shame on the police officers for not finding it and confiscating it. But yeah, always shame on the police officers, if you ask me.
That might have belonged in an evidence bag. I agree.
Yeah. So another thing that happens within the house that I think is a scene that is very easily forgotten, but it's one of my favorite sequences in the film.
I'm going to interrupt because I hope I'm right. Is it when the bird bursts into flames?
It sure is. It sure is.
Because I'm like, wait, I think I know what it is, and I want to make sure I'm right. Yes.
Absolutely.
I had no recollection of this. I'm like, this is such a crazy thing that happens, that the bird bursts into flames.
This movie is so gay that people forget about the bird scene. That's completely insane. That's completely insane. So basically what's happening is that the family is all hanging out in the living room and they're all complaining that it's so hot in here. Everybody's complaining that it's hot.
It is so hot in here.
Jesse's always so sweaty. And it's crazy. And then all of a sudden the bird cage, which contains a parakeet in it, or a couple of parakeets, starts shaking. And the bird starts attacking. Now, whenever I think about parakeets, I always think about the original Hills Have Eyes. So you got to do a lot to impress me with a parakeet scene. And this does it, because when that bird gets out of the cage, it just spontaneously combusts. And we get a line that's something along the lines of like, animals don't just explode into flame for no reason.
I mean, animals just don't explode into flames for no reason, do they?
That's right.
Through the logic of the script, it did happen for no reason.
Yeah.
You know? And by the way, my notes say that I didn't expect a birdemic to break out in the middle of their...
Big Mama's in the kitchen. And everybody's wishing.
It's such a crazy thing that does. I mean, I get it. It gets really hot, and you know the boiling pool and the pool scene. So I understand that these are some of the themes for what's happening, but we don't really get any kind of logical explanation other than, you know, somebody was like, yeah, we should probably have a bird burst into flames in this movie. Why? I don't know, because it'll look cool. And they're right. It did look cool.
I have heard that the creators of this film were not pleased with that scene and thought that it ended up being too goofy. But I love it. I think it's just one of those... Here's the thing that I love about the 80s slasher films. I love the absurdity in them. And I think that this movie does a great job of absurdity when it's doing it. Right. Is it perfect in those ways? Absolutely not. But this parakeet scene, it works really well for me because it's just weird enough.
Yeah, no, it is very weird. And it's you know, if I ever revisit anything from this movie again, it's probably that scene, because I'll be like, no, I can't be remembering it correctly. And then I'll rewatch it and I'll be like, oh yeah. By the way, I made the executive decision that I rented this film on Amazon, and I decided that I would pay $1.99 for the standard def instead of $2.99 for the high def, because I'm like, you know what? This needs to be watched in standard def. The way that most people saw it, at least it wasn't like the old pan and scan, you know, box TV format. But I think that this scene in particular really shines in standard definition.
I would not want to see a 4K restoration of this scene. That is for sure.
Jesse's nipples would also just be horrifying in 4K restoration.
His nipples are a little bit pepperoni nipples, and now I can't stop thinking about it because you brought them up. Let me think about his crotch shots, not his nipples. Come on.
Yeah, and of course, you know, humping the football field, you know. Yeah, so there's so much more of Jesse than just those nipples, you know.
Come on. Now let's move forward into the pool party scene, because you are right that this is where the movie really starts picking up. So at this point, Jesse realizes that he's kind of being possessed by Freddy. He is waking up with the glove on. He's not sure exactly what's going on, and he's starting to get very uncomfortable, and we can see that he believes that perhaps he is the one who killed the coach, because, you know, he has this glove, and he's not sure what's going on, and he's not talking with anybody about it, because he's always just, you know, I mean, I would be afraid to tell people that I seemed insane as well, so... I get that. So during the midst of all of this, Lisa ends up having a pool party. And you mentioned it already, but it is the least sexy 80s pool party that has ever existed. There is not one sexual thing that is happening in this pool party.
Yeah, Damone from Fast Times would walk up to this pool party, look around, and just turn around and leave. You know, he would not stay at this pool party.
Nope.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot of one-piece bathing suits. It's you know, you do have some, you know, extras like making out, but again, this goes back to the zero nudity, and I don't know what exactly they're going for in this movie, because I we'll refer to it if we talk more about Grady, but the kills are not particularly graphic. And honestly, I got to reference the fact that Grady gets killed we see it through the other side of the door. So we're not getting the nudity, we're not getting the violence, but this movie's rated R. There's no way that it can't be rated R. It's almost like they were trying to go for a PG-13 and then just failed. Maybe it was because of the bird, that they were like, we can't have 14-year-olds watching this. You have to be at least 17. So, I mean, the pool party, and they make a reference earlier about how the dad is a really corny DJ, but the parent characters, both Jesse and Lisa's parents, are just awful, terribly written characters, and the less time spent with them, the better. But then the movie would be an hour and 20 minutes instead of an hour 25.
I actually really like Jesse's father. What is it? Gulager. Yeah, Gulager.
Nobody likes a smart-ass, buddy boy.
I thought that he did a really great job in this movie. He is a stereotypical annoying dad who, wants everything to be done in a certain regime. But I thought he did a good job with his character. I agree that everybody else is kind of ancillary.
But the scene with him and Jesse's mother, like, those are the scenes of couples, of adult couples, are badly written. I do like that Jesse's dad, his kid comes home after spending the night looking for some rough trade at the local S&M bar, and immediately, because it's the 80s, he's clearly on drugs.
2 questions. You answer them, we can all go to bed, all right? What are you taking, son? Who are you getting it from?
Yeah. And this is, him talking about the gay overtones, really, where he's like, he just needs a quick kick in the butt.
What that boy needs is a good goddamn kick in the butt. That's what he needs.
And I think he also suggests a methadone clinic.
Tell you what he needs. He needs a methadone clinic.
So I'm like, you're all over over the place with this message.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. All right, so back into the pool party.
Yes.
Okay, so all the kids are being boring at the pool, but Jesse and Kim go in like a little pool room area, and they start making out, and Jesse starts disrobing Kim, and it's very erotic. Except then Jesse all of a sudden has the crazy, crazy, crazy long Freddy Krueger tongue.
Yes, which that is one of the memorable things from this movie. And, he's very gently massaging with his tongue, like above her cleavage.
Yes.
This is like a high school production of a horror movie because of the things that we don't see. And, yes, it's gratuitous and unnecessary, but that's why we love it.
Yes.
You and I have talked multiple times about the Linnea Quigley kill scene in Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2, because they use the same scene. And no, she should have a shirt on, but thank God she doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, I want the nudity. I would have loved to see Kim. I would have liked this scene to push the limits even further. Jesse's reaction when he gets this crazy long tongue is that he immediately stops hooking up with her because he's clearly questioning his own sexuality. I think his reaction is kind of like an allegorical look at his revulsion to sexual contact with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
I would have liked it if we had, 1, seen boobies, and 2, if he had kept licking her for a little while before he got repulsed. And we can't do that because he has to be gay, and so he can't want to continue touching her. He needs an excuse to stop touching her.
Right, and if Lisa would just open her eyes and seen that tongue, she might have just pushed his head down lower, been like, all right, now we're talking.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been great. And of course, when this happens and he freaks out, instead of seeking Kim's comfort, he runs over to his male friend Grady's house and asks him for help, which is like, wow.
Yeah. By the way, the set dressing for Grady's bedroom was clearly a page out of 80s gay interior decorating.
Yes.
Because everything about it seemed very homoerotic. And Grady's even she's waiting for you in the cabana, but instead you want to sleep with me. And he says, sleep with me. You know what I mean? Not sleep here with me. It's it was just in case you didn't get it yet. And this is where I was just like, man, I didn't get any of this when I saw this, when I was 12, but yeah. So, I mean, Grady is really the one he loves, I guess, is what we have to take away from this, Kaylee.
I think that is what we have to take away from this movie, but it's unfortunate because this scene is not going to go well for Grady. So Jesse falls asleep here, and he starts shaking, and knives grow from his fingers, which I think is a beautiful effect. I really like all of the effects in this scene.
When he opens his mouth and Freddy's eye is looking out, there are great effects in this scene. I agree.
Great effects. And I love this again because it is really truly talking about his inner self is literally bursting out of his outer self. He can't contain his gayness anymore in this scene. He is bursting at the seams. His fingers are coming alive. We have the eyeball. And then eventually Freddy actually bursts through his stomach in a wonderful sense of being born.
Yes, this is the moment in a young boy's life when they're sitting there and Act 2 of Wicked begins, and then they realize just who they are inside. It's like, oh my God, this is me. Yeah. I am this person. This is what I'm into. And and the reason why, look, the pool party, we've talked about multiple times what's disappointing about the setting of it. What Freddy does at the pool party, more importantly, what he does not do at the pool party. There are a couple of guys get killed, but there's nowhere near the bloodshed that I think would be expected from a Freddy Krueger emerging into the real world for the first time in decades, and just getting to, just kill and, get blood all over it. The fact that there's no blood in that pool means that it was probably a stipulation from the location.
The homeowner.
Yeah, the location scout was like, all right, but no blood in my pool. Like, all right, well then what the hell are we doing here,
So the other thing that I have a problem once we get back into the pool sequence and Freddy is out with everybody is that, don't you think that these 20 kids could have taken him down pretty easily? I understand that Freddy has some supernatural powers and that he is pretty strong and that he's pretty great. And we've all seen his arms do the big long arm thing. He's pretty great. We can all agree on that. What I don't understand, maybe 3 kids couldn't take him down, but 20 kids? These kids could have taken him down.
Yeah. 20 guys in their mid-30s pretending that they're 17 definitely could have taken him down. And you referenced the long arms. This is Freddy in the real world. He can't do all the things that he can do in the dream world, which is, again, why he's less interesting in this movie. And yes, he's just a guy with a glove. Yes, he's strong. That's not up for debate. Yeah. But they definitely could have, at the very least, pinned him down, had the glove behind his back, and somebody could have used one of those 80s cordless phones that you have to pull the antenna out and call 911. Yeah. They could have held him until the police showed up. Yeah. But no, that's not what happens, is it, Kaylee?
No, it's absolutely not. I do. So in the beginning of when we are kind of seeing things escalate during the pool party sequence, we get to see the water levels rising in the pool, so it starts boiling.
Hey, could somebody turn down the heat in the pool?
But there are a couple other homoerotic things that are happening, including hot dogs, aka dicks, catching on fire, and then beer cans popping open with cum. It is very we are having some ejaculations and some penises. You can't watch horror movies without thinking about the phallus. That is a huge part of horror movies, is women taking over something that is shaped like a phallus and wielding it like a weapon and taking over a man because of it and all this great stuff. And so when I see hot dogs at a nighttime pool party, come on,
and Yeah, the way that the beer cans open was, it's almost like they
Sexy.
wanted to go back and do it like a slow-mo,
Yes.
we didn't have the Matrix technology yet, but it's almost like that's what we needed to see the pre-cum out of the can. And it's all very much right there in front of us. And for anybody to watch this now and say, you know what, I didn't think the movie was that gay, that's the conversation to have for somebody who's not convinced by watching it now.
I would completely agree with that. So the end of the movie gets a little bit sloppy for me. I agree with you. The pool party sequence is probably the low point of the film. It could have been better, and that's why I consider it to be the low point. But
he could have killed every kid in that pool.
Yes.
Like every single one of them. We just needed Lisa to get away, and she already did. There was no reason for any of those kids to be around.
And I think that the kill count is only 10 in this movie, which is relatively low, especially for a mid-80s popular slasher film. So the end of the movie, we basically get Kim starting to encourage Jesse to fight what is trying to get from inside of him. She is saying, hey, no, come love me, don't be gay. But she is saying that covertly by saying, don't let Freddy take over for you here.
You can fight him.
Push those feelings down deep inside, Jesse, and have a loveless marriage, and spend it with me.
Oh, buddy. So Jesse is gone at this point, and Freddy is there. So Freddy starts chasing Lisa around, and at one point he bites her ankle, which I was like, that was kind of a weird choice, but it happened. Again, it doesn't have that same oomph that we get for some of the other kills, like welcome to primetime, bitch. Ankle biting is like, what is it? Is he a chihuahua in this movie?
Well, it feels a little bit like foreplay, and that's the interesting thing because yes, it is Jesse, but in the Freddy makeup, I don't think in any of the other movies do we have a character who kisses Freddy as Freddy. So yes, she is basically kissing Jesse to try and pull Jesse back out. But that was what I thought was fascinating about the scene. And by the way, we better talk about that cat. I don't want you to brush past the crazy demon cat in this scene. But the fact that this girl kisses Freddy, that's what happens on the screen. I know what it's supposed to be. I was just like, this is crazy. Like this should never happen in any of these movies. But good for the actress who played Lisa. You said her name was Kim. Yes. Good for her.
Slimy.
She gets to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. I can't imagine what that tasted like. Petroleum jelly. I don't even know.
Is it just Caro syrup? I would guess Caro syrup.
Actually, that's probably what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I really get lost in this entire scene, but at some point Lisa grabs a knife, a very phallic shaped knife, if I do add myself, and she goes to stab Freddy with it, but it does nothing. So at this point, Freddy is Jesse, and the penis stabbing into the, I don't know. There's a lot of things happening.
The penis stabbing doesn't hurt him.
Yes.
Because he enjoys it.
He enjoys it. And then at one point he jumps out of a glass door and just disappears. Yeah. So he is still magical superpower or supernatural
that's a great point.
Freddy.
Yeah. And there's some like telekinetic stuff going on. There is stuff happening, but you're right. But he's not as all powerful as he seems, and those 20 kids definitely could have subdued him.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. He does look really cool though when he's like standing in front of that flame. There's a really great shot. It's just very beautiful. It stands out in my mind quite a bit. Anyway, so Lisa runs off to the place where Freddy used to work at. So basically the boiler room set, and we had gotten a bunch of backfill about why this is the place that matters earlier on in the movie. And there are hounds of hell. They're like dogs in weird ass masks. Is
Yes.
that how you would define the situation?
I think that these are dogs cosplaying as Gozer from Ghostbusters, because it doesn't look like that, but the dogs are like, yeah, but what if we put these masks on, huh? Yeah, that'd be pretty funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that I referred to them as creepy baby dogs in my notes.
Yes, they are creepy baby dogs. Yes,
it is like that was a weird choice. People like those. People think that that's a cool design. I do not think that that is a cool design in any way, shape, or form. But
I hope that no one thinks that the crazy demon cat that eats the meth addict mouse. No one can be impressed by that. I mean, the bird blowing up is cool, but this is just this is just stupid. Like it's not convincing. It looks really bad.
You know what I just realized? First we have the bird, then we have the cat, then we have the dogs.
That's right.
That's like the chain of, it's the food chain.
It's the circle of life. Exactly.
Oh my God. Oh my God, that's so stupid. Oh,
That's really,
I love it.
it's even dumber than we thought it was.
That's so much worse. But I like the set design of this boiler room kind of area. We get a very far pulled out shot, so we really get to see where Kim is kind of exploring. I think it's quite nice. I think it's very well done. And of course, Freddy ends up catching up to Kim as she's running around this place. And this is when she's like, well, I love you.
I love you, Jesse.
I guess I figured at this point that only love can defeat Freddy. Is that the message that we're...
That this is actually what the song "The Greatest Love of All" is about. Is about how love can defeat Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Yes.
That's the greatest love of all. Yeah, and by the way, but there's a lot of people he might love in this movie. Lisa's a great friend. There's a term that we used to use that the second word is hag. That's really who she is for him.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. 110%. 110%. And this again is where she kisses him, and the boiler room is up in flames, and Freddy is burning and melting, and it looks really sick, and it's like super drippy and gross.
It looks great, by the way.
Yeah.
I love watching the way that he melts. I'm like, they did this great. This looks fantastic.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect. Jesse then rises from Freddy's burnt remains and takes off the little remnants of him. And again, it's him shedding his
heterosexual skin.
Yeah.
And he strips down because this is the time for a strip tease. This is the time for the full Monty, Kaylee. This is what you need right here.
Yes. I've been waiting. Kim goes to embrace him here, and he looks grossed out. It is so overt. She is crying, and then he puts his head on her. It feels almost more like she's maternal than anything else to me. And we fade to black. And then the next day, we start back out where we started the film, which is a school bus comes and picks Jesse up. And his arms are all taped up because, of course, he was injured during all of the crazy times. And him and Kim kiss.
I mean, that's...
a little. I guess the implication is they're together now.
Mark Hamill kissing Carrie Fisher in the first Star Wars is more passion than this, and that's his sister. Spoiler alert. Watching this as a savvy film viewer in his late 40s in 2025, I'm like, okay, this is another dream sequence because he's taking the bus. They spend so much time talking about his car. Nothing happens to his car. There's not the scene where his car catches on fire or Freddy, slashes his tires. No, he's taking the bus. So I'm like, all right, this is going to be a cool ending, and.
Yeah, what kind of a self-respecting teenager takes the bus when they could drive themselves to school?
That is, you sound like many arguments I had with my parents my senior year of high school. Yes.
Yes. So Jesse starts thinking that the bus is going too fast, but it's not. It's going normal. And then one of the other teenage high school girls is like, it's fine. It's all over. And then a Freddy hand comes out at the screen.
It's okay. It's all over.
Through her belly, again, getting burst out of the birthing area.
Yeah, there's a Rosemary's Baby thing there. By the way, this was one of those effects that I was like, they could have done so much more with it. The claw coming out of her stomach, I'm like, this is really disappointing. You know what I mean? And I don't know, maybe they used the budget for that on the first bus scene that we were talking about when we started. But to end on that note where it kind of falls flat and it doesn't look as cool as you want it to, I'm like, well, that's fitting for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Yeah. The bus does end up back in the desert, but we don't get any of the cool
stalactites and stalagmites. I don't know.
They're mites because they're coming from the ground.
Because I sure didn't.
I couldn't say the word, but I knew the difference.
I sound like an idiot, but I'm very smart. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Kaylee, I have to tell you that I think differently about this movie, but I don't think much more highly of it. It is still, if we ever do a special, which we probably should on one of our channels or both of our channels, we should rank all of the Freddy Krueger movies, including the remake with Jackie Earle Haley. I almost said Haley Joel Osment. Imagine that. Imagine Haley Joel Osment. Because I don't hate that movie. I think that they could have continued with another actor if they'd wanted to, but it's disappointing in a lot of ways. I don't know why they did it without Robert Englund. That's the real question, because even now he's not that old. You know, I guess he is. He's pretty old.
I actually did a full review of that movie and also Freddy's Dead #6 over on Hack the Movies, and I definitely, it sounds like you and I might have some differing opinions about the remake.
I only saw it in the theater one time, and I remember thinking, and I mean, that was that moment where Jackie Earle Haley was back, and I do think he was a good choice. You know, it's sort of like David Harbour playing Hellboy isn't necessarily a good choice, but that one seemed to make sense for me.
So this is what I will say, though. In the same way that I think that this movie, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, is the best makeup, I think that the remake is the worst makeup. I mean, and the voice is the worst in the remake. There's a lot of issues with that, but what is the last actual Freddy Krueger Robert Englund movie? Is it Jason vs. Freddy, or did they do another standalone Freddy after that? I didn't mean to put you on the spot, because I'm trying to think of trying to think about what year was what. I think it is Freddy
that's
versus
so sad
Jason.
That's the way that
If it's not, I'll put it right here. Yeah, I agree. And there's many thoughts about that movie, including Kane Hodder's non-participation in it as Jason that I have thoughts on. But that's a whole other topic. As long as we are talking about ratings, what we do need to do before we finish up here is we need to rate Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on a scale of 7 thumbs up. So I would love to know what you would rate this, knowing that it still isn't your favorite thing in the world.
Well, I'm going to use what I've heard Robert Englund refer to as the hero glove, which is the Freddy glove. And you know that it doesn't have a claw on the thumb. Yep. So it is going to be a clawless thumb. But I will put up, I would say, because of there's effects that we talked about that actually look really cool in this.
Yeah.
So out of 7, I'm going to give this 2 because there are things that do look really cool, but I mean, a lot of this movie is just a mess, you know. Yeah. And it really does not feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It should have been a different character possessing this boy, but obviously you have the intellectual property, you're trying to make money, and they did. And I, for one, am glad that New Line Cinema was able to stay afloat because of some of the great films that they went on to give us.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. However, I would rate this much higher than you do. I love this movie. I know that it's sloppy at parts. I know that it's goofy at parts. I know that it could be better. I know that there could be better kills. I know that there could be better subtext. I know that there could be I know there could be boobs. I'm aware of all of those things. However, I still have so much fun watching it. I just think it is a fun one. It's a short little film. And because of that, I think I would give it a solid 5 thumbs up out of 7. it's short enough that I can enjoy it. There's little moments that I think are really fun that we didn't even really get into the minutia of. At one point, Jesse's little sister is eating Fu Manchus.
I'm trying to get the Fu Man fingers.
And she gets little, knives that she puts on, like little cereal prizes that she puts on her fingers. It is just... It's fun enough and short enough that I get to enjoy it every time that I watch it. So I would put this very high up. And I would also really highly recommend watching, if you haven't seen it, Scream Queen, the documentary about Mark Patton, because it is really interesting to see kind of his perspective on what happened to his career, on how this impacted him, and how being gay in Hollywood was such a challenge. He went through a lot of problems. He was AIDS and HIV positive, and he has survived through quite a bit of disease, and it's interesting to see his perspective.
Yeah, no, that is actually very interesting, and I hadn't I hadn't heard of that film until you mentioned it. I love the title. And
Yes.
I would definitely want to check that out. And
it's free on Tubi right now.
Oh my gosh! And but he's still with us, right?
Yes, correct.
Mark Patton.
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
And he goes to the conventions, and so a lot of people have met him and have had wonderful things to say about him. And he definitely is an interesting guy. I don't agree with everything that he says in the documentary. I think that there are many ways that he shifts blame onto other people that he shouldn't necessarily do. But I think it's a really interesting look into his life and into the creation of this film. And so it's very exciting.
Yeah, no, and look, I am glad I had the occasion to rewatch it. And it does make me appreciate the fact that parts 3, 4, and 5 were just around the corner. And I did look it up, and just the timeline for the movies is, so after Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, it was only 3 years later before Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But that's 94. Freddy vs. Jason is 2003, so 9 years later. And the next movie is the one with Jackie Earle Haley. So the last time that Robert Englund ever played Freddy was in Jason vs. Freddy. And that was a movie that was at least 10 years too late, maybe 20 years too late. Like, the point where we all wanted that Jason versus Freddy movie was so far past that. And then they gave us that movie, which I'm not a fan of, let's just say.
I can tell. Yeah. It sounds to me like Freddy's Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street 6 might be your favorite. We'll keep that ranking for when we do our rankings. So I am excited to hear about that.
What we're talking about is an excuse to rewatch really all the rest of them. So,
it's true. It's true.
I'm happy to do my homework. It's better than when Husey has me watch a bunch of Zack Snyder films.
Michael Bay. Yeesh. Anyways, thank you so very much for joining me. I would love it if you would tell everybody one more time where they can find you.
Yeah, so the thing that I save for my plugs at the end is the podcast that I co-created, pitched, and sold to a company called Pantheon Podcast. The podcast is called 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, and I think, Kaylee, you yourself and some of your audience would be interested in certainly some of the episodes. It's hosted by Brian Slagle, who is the CEO and founder of Metal Blade Records, which put out records from Anthrax, Slayer, and we have members of both of those bands on the show. We have comedians like Don Jameson, Jim Florentine, and get this, the episode about War Pigs, Brian actually talked to me for about 6 minutes, so that's crazy. But it's a really fun show. It's getting some good feedback. And because of the way that company works, I don't know what their deal is. We can actually play little snippets of the song. So it's a lot of fun. As we're recording this, I'm most of the way done with the Ace of Spades Motorhead episode. I have to get right back to that. So I'm excited to spend the rest of my day with Lemmy, but this was a nice way to start my day. And of course, the Bladcast, Bladtcast. And who are these broadcasters? Live Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and wherever you find your audio podcasts.
And of course, the links for all of those things will be down below. So thank you again, Christian, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait for the next one. Bye.
Yeah, and it's also weird to be doing a show with you without Husey doing tons of video drops.
It's going to be so relaxing.
Yeah, it is very stressful.